and the subscription I have for this service, I found out deletes recorded videos after a certain amount of time.
Oh
So
no.
I'm going to have to do a take two with her.
Oh,
Hopefully she's up for it. Yeah. So that was
no.
like, I went in to get the video to do an edit of it to get it posted. It's like, wait a minute, where'd it go? It's like, oh, we only keep your videos for so long. So,
Oh no. I've done
uh,
that Zoom before.
yeah.
Hmm.
All right. Well, I'm gonna start fresh. Like I'm not
Okay.
gonna, yeah. Like I don't want to like jump back and forth and do whatever. So
Yeah. Sounds good. You spelled my name right this time.
I double checked. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I
great.
think that's I think that's the only thing I screwed up last time. His name.
Yeah, the big ball drop was on my part.
Well, it wasn't your part. I was just in a sprint planning session, like the first one for a new squad, and I was like deep into it, explaining things, and the power blinked here, so I was out for like 10 minutes. They just were like waiting. It was awesome.
Mine was out for a while that day, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it was annoying, but okay. Well, we will get going, so that way, if you do get kicked out, it happens after we end. Jessica Mathews is here for our spotlight. I had the opportunity of working with her at Storable. We may have had a bumpy beginning, but luckily she was gracious enough to let me back into her circle, and then we spent a couple years together working through driving some really cool change. So this is all about Jessica. So I'm going to do my best to talk as little as possible to make sure everybody understands what that bumpy first introduction was like. Do you mind telling everybody what kind of a jerk I was the first time we met?
I mean, not like grade 1 level jerk, but I mean, grade 2, grade 3. No, we were coming together for the first time at a company-wide leadership conference, and it was the first one that they were hosting. And I noticed that I was seated next to Josh Anderson, and I had been told that Josh Anderson was the agile coach, engineering leader, all the things. But what caught my eye was the agile coach, scrum master, thing like that, in the Raleigh, North Carolina office. And I was very excited to be seated next to you because I was the same thing for the Kansas City office. And I thought, we're just going to have so much to talk about. This is going to be easy flowing conversation. They clearly sat us next to each other on purpose because we have so much to talk about. People are going to be pulling us away from each other. So I got there and I was like, "Hey, Josh, I'm Jessica, and I work with the Scrum Masters at that time, the Scrum Master, the other one in the Kansas City office, and nice to meet you. I've heard about you." And he was like, "Hey," and then he was out. He walked away. So, so it was fine. Not you weren't rude. You
It
just
sounds like I was rude.
well, yes, but not to the extent that like
Oh, well,
I had built something up in my head that wasn't going to be a thing that day, but we got there over time.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
genuine when we got there.
yeah. It was, yeah. That's one of those things of uh, Josh is always working on things like that because I tend to get my mind rolling on something and then I don't handle situations like that well enough. But Jessica was kind enough to remind me of how I operated so that I can get better. So I do appreciate her for that. One of the things that I have always really respected about Jessica is her willingness. I probably shouldn't say her, like you're here, is your willingness to try new things, and if they work, you keep them. And one of those was the way you did sprint review for your teams there in KC. And I remember you prefaced the explanation with it of like, well, you're probably not going to like this, but here's how we roll. So can you talk me through the approach you took and what drove you there?
Yeah. Hi, Pamela, by the way. I don't know how to respond to the chats, but hi, Pamela. We should catch up soon. But yeah, so the sprint reviews in the Kansas City office by the time we joined up with you all was different than I've seen it done anywhere. And it was the product of, what else? A retrospective. So the thing that happened was, well, I'll start here. I am a person who is grounded on what are we trying to do with this session and not what are the rules of this session. So what are we trying to do with the sprint review? We're trying to show what we built. We're trying to get feedback. We're trying to engage with our stakeholders, trying to think through what we would do next. And our current sprint review was not meeting that. And we were talking about that in a retrospective. And on top of that, the engineers were sharing things like, well, it's another meeting. And I'm sure everybody hears this, right? It's another meeting. And, it's 2020, whatever year it was. I don't know, 2019. And why do we have to have so many meetings? And so what we did in our retro was just grounded ourselves on, well, what are we trying to do? And is there another way? And how will we know if it's successful or not? Because I'll be honest, when we started that experiment, I was like, this will fail and we will come back to sprint reviews in the normal fashion and it'll be fine. But the suggestion from the team was, well, let's just do an asynchronous one where after, the sprint is over, we will create short video clips on what we built and we'll drop it in a channel that is dedicated to sprint reviews. And our stakeholders will be able to see the videos and comment in thread with feedback or questions, and we can answer them. I'm like, okay, nobody has to go to a meeting. This is fine. We will do this. And so we met with the stakeholders. We set expectations. We reoriented again on why we were, what we want out of sprint review, and asked them to be open and honest with us. So we tried it, and overwhelmingly, the feedback was positive from everybody. The engineers were positive about it. They didn't have to go to meetings. They didn't mind creating their short video clips and explaining things. The stakeholders really had a very positive response to it, because if they were off on Fridays, which is when our sprint ended, they came in on Monday and they watched the thing and they didn't miss it. They were able to comment in thread and get feedback. And we had this never-ending documentation of what did we build and when. And I asked a question. I can't remember what the answer was. Let me go back and see it. And so it just went really well. I will say long-term, there was a lesson learned there where it's like, we got to stay on top of that, make sure it continues to go well. Over time, I think the engagement was less and less, and nobody was there. I had moved further away, and the engineers who came up with the idea had moved further away, and it sort of started to die off a little bit. So long-term, I think there's a lesson learned there in continuing to foster it and continuing to make it what you want to be, make sure you're checking in on what you're trying to get out of it. But ultimately, it was a very, very successful experiment. But anybody who came from outside of the organization and heard about it was like, well, you're not doing Scrum.
Yeah, I had a similar reaction when you explained it to what you have. Like, there's no way this works. And then you continue to explain, and I jumped in and I saw what Jessica was talking about. I saw those videos. I watched them. The team was doing a great job of explaining, this is what we built, this is how it works. And then the comment threads were fantastic. And it was so much better because the comfort folks have in Slack to ask questions is vastly different than in a large meeting with 50 people in it, or maybe over Zoom with 50 people in it. Just people are less likely to ask questions. And to Jessica's point, they can do it whenever. So maybe they don't feel like it right now. Maybe they're juggling something and they I got to go to that meeting. I'm worried about this, and they don't actually get a chance to focus there. So to me, it was one of those things where wow, this is it's something I've carried with me. And especially in today's world, I think it makes a ton of sense where you're mostly remote. Even if you're not, I just think there have been struggles I've had in the past with sprint review engagement of getting people to actually add value by being there rather than feeling like they have to be there, than being nervous of saying something and maybe sounding stupid or whatever it is. That Slack changes that. So to me, it's one of those things that I think more people should try, but also forget all of that. More people should think like Jessica does about hey, what are we actually trying to accomplish? What's the value we're trying to get out of that? And throughout the time that we spent together, you just kept doing that over and over again. And I think that's what has made you a really great leader and a really great agile thinker, which is what we need more of.
I appreciate that. I can't take the credit for that one. I will say the team came up with it. I supported it and helped them get there. So I was very, very happy to watch it succeed, actually, because I knew that the team felt really good about. And again, then this points to, if anybody asks, what's the point of retrospective? Well, how do you like your sprint reviews? That came out of your retrospective, remember? Those types of conversations. But it was a very successful experiment. And I'll say it was pre-COVID. So it was even more of a stretch then, I would say, for us to do that. And I would say now they continue to do this. And some teams are now having like Zoom, in person, not in person, but over Zoom sprint reviews. And then they record it and post it in that channel still, so somebody can go watch it. But yeah, credit does go to the team somehow.
Credit goes to that team for the idea, but credit goes to you for creating the environment that enables and empowers something like that to happen. Because you even said like, "Oh, this is going to fail," right? But still, you let the team do their thing and try it, and you accepted that maybe you don't have all of the answers, which no one does.
Yeah.
And so that environment that you created allowed that to happen. So give yourself some more credit, Jessica.
Okay, I'll take that one.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Switching gears, agile coaching, scrum mastery, like it's such a unusual role because there is no like common path into something like that. So how did you discover that this was a thing and you thought you would want to spend some time pointing your career in that direction?
I was a BA for a large company, and I was pulling together a lot of integrations between our company and other companies, and figuring out how does our API have to work, and how to, all those types of things, and lived in very much in the world of large projects and upfront requirements and all the things that don't work. So I was brought into, I think this is how it happened a lot several years ago is what I'll say, a little pod where they were like, hey, we're trying something new. We're doing something cool. We want you to be a part of it. And so I was brought into that as a product owner. And it was just clear to me from the beginning, it was a better way to do things. It was more transparent. It was more real. It was admitting that, we can't make all the decisions in the beginning. And more than that, where, I think it's funny because people say, well, we can't do Agile or Scrum because we're doing work for a client. That's sometimes true depending on the client. But what I was doing was with clients, and that's what made it work so well, is we were on the same page about it, and we were talking all the time, and we were learning as we went, and we were developing things, and we were showing them what we built, and they were showing it. So it just clicked in my head that this just made so much more sense to me, and I just felt more confident in what we were doing. And so then I just started to explore that. I think I did that for a year or less before I asked the team that was leading that if I could come be on their team, and they had me. And so I started as a Scrum Master there, and then it's just kind of gone from there. Different roles between product owner or Scrum Master, or managing a Scrum Master team, managing Scrum Masters and product owners.
Gotcha. So speaking of product owners, and I'm going to use this term very loosely, we started doing something at Storable that you and I were both pretty excited about how we helped people grow. So we were directors, peers at Storable, and we each had an area of focus. So at this time, I was working with the product managers, and we had Scrum Masters, which you were leading, and then we had product owners, and like, where does that fit? And I don't remember who came up with the idea, but we landed on, the reality is product owners and Scrum Masters work together, and they're kind of like a little mini team. So why don't we just put them in the same group under Jessica, because they're both trying to achieve the same goal and they need to work together. So why have it separate? Why not just pair them up as one group that we go and we help deliver value? And so it worked out great. In the end, we ran into some, investors that thought they knew better and said, well, to your point, well, you aren't doing Scrum or whatever. Like, that's not how this book says it should be done. But you actually in the trenches knew this was right for the team. So tell me how we got there, and then whether you think that experiment worked, and whether those investors were just flat wrong and they didn't know what they were talking about.
Well, those same investors did call me out for the sprint review over Slack. So,
okay.
But I think it was actually your idea, and I think you and our boss brought that to me, and I thought about it for a while, and I'm always willing to try something. That's why I like to try new things. So, and I've always have had a love for being a product owner and being a Scrum Master. So, being able to lead both those teams and work with both, and think of ways for everybody to grow in different ways was really exciting to me. So we did that, and I think it was very successful, actually. Prior to that, our product owners were sort of dispersed throughout the organization and not really working together or learning together or playing off of each other. And that was probably the biggest change I would see in the product owner team, is they were actually using each other as resources. And sharing things with each other. And here's, hey, I'm trying this, who's tried that? Look at this article. Let's get together and talk about this thing that I'm experiencing. I don't know if anybody can help me. And that was really, I would say, the biggest win of that change. And I loved it. I loved that experiment. I loved having the product owners and the Scrum Masters. We did it. We were one team, but we also had sub water coolers where the Scrum Masters would go and have conversations around things that they were super interested in, and the product owners did the same thing. But we would all come back together, and we wrote a mission statement together, and we wrote our values together, and we created a T-shirt that you still didn't wear. And we loved it. I think it was a very successful experiment. I do think it had some limitations, which ultimately we're not structured that way now. And the limitations that I see aren't the ones that that were described to us at that time. The limitations really were, I'm only one person, and we're growing so fast that there's so many product owners now and so many Scrum Masters that I can't effectively manage and help that many people at one time. And so the options were to figure out a different reporting structure or to hire managers in between. And I actually just think that we're not that great at hiring a whole nother layer of management and figuring out that communication. And so I really wasn't excited about that option. So we went in a different direction, and that is a relatively new experiment still. We'll see how that one goes. But I would say for the time when product owners and Scrum Masters were both on one team, I think it went really well. And had we not been growing so fast, I don't think we ever would have changed it.
Yeah. And what got you here won't get you there. You and I have both lived through that. And at the time, it seemed like a really great fit. But with the continued growth, it does. You are just one human, a really good one, but just one human. Yeah. So that T-shirt, that's a tough one. That's a tough one for me, because this T-shirt got shipped to my house, and I opened it up, and I'm like, oh man, this is a great T-shirt. And then it was like Engineering Ops, which is the name of Jessica's team. And I was so jealous, because like the design on the front was good, but the back really hit me hard, because it was like, this is our values, this is how we operate. I'm like, oh, that's just like beautiful. And so I still keep the T-shirt, I still wear it, and every time I put it on, it's like I smile and I get frustrated, because I'm like, man, Jessica beat me to it. So I was pretty disappointed in myself, but love the T-shirt, and I love the way you were leading people. I think that enabled so much of the success that we saw together as we help grow that company, as you continue to grow that company. So I can't say enough about Jessica, just like I probably won't be able to say enough about many of the people that I bring on here. But Jessica is definitely someone that I hope to work with at some point in my career, preferably to just like hand her the keys to as much as possible, and then be able to say like, oh, she's got it, she's going to crush it. So
I appreciate that.
That's what I look forward to, somehow, some way.
Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah. Lastly, just like on a personal note, you live on some sort of giant farm. Well, to me, giant, right? It's probably not giant to some people, but like a city kid, it's giant. How did you land there, and what about that life do you enjoy?
It's neither giant nor a farm. Well,
You
okay.
have farmish things.
We do have farmers things. My husband would be like, yeah, just do a farm. Um, it is 30 acres, so it is big compared to most people who
Yeah.
live in cities. But we landed there. I met my husband, and ultimately, his dream has always been to have property and to be able to spread out a little bit. And so I quickly got on board with that. It sounded great. And when we got very serious in our relationship, we started looking for property. We found it. We found the perfect 30 acres, and we bought it. And so our life sort of it definitely is a change. I joke all the time because I have had my car. It's a 2020 year, and I have 113,000 miles on it because we just drive. I mean, anywhere we go, it's a long drive, and I'm never complaining when I say that. To be clear, that's a choice we made. We knew it would be that way, but yeah, it was a choice we made, and we love it. My husband has planted over 100 trees. I mean, hundreds of trees at this point. He has a huge garden, but we don't have animals. That's why I say it's not a farm.
Oh,
But
no animals. Okay.
yeah, it
Well,
can
but you
be.
have kids, right? And those count.
Yeah, we have four of those.
Yeah. So yeah, those
Yeah,
those are animals.
that's true. That's so true. We have two dogs. We have some cats. We don't have cows or chickens or anything. We probably will at some point, but for now, we've been there for 6 years, and we're definitely settling in. And we got engaged on the property. We got married on that property, and we're
Nice.
just kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and we love it.
That's fantastic. Not
Yeah.
for me, but fantastic for you.
Yeah,
I'm
we love
not
it. You
sure I
can't see
would.
the neighbors. We've had I've been sitting on the front porch, and my kid has come out, running outside in his underwear, and
Yeah.
that's fine. The birds don't mind, the trees.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. I have had a naked kid running down the street here, running down the cul-de-sac, just like, oh my God, what's happening? And like someone grabs him, like walks him up by his hand. Is like, I think this is yours. I'm like, yeah, that's
Yeah,
mine.
yeah. If that
Yeah.
happens at my house, it's definitely mine because you can't see the neighbors. So.
All right. So any other like this is your opportunity for any cheap shots you want to take at me. Anything you want to make sure the public knows about Strange Josh, Weird Josh, Rude Josh. We already covered that, but if you want to dig in there more, that's perfectly fine.
No, I don't have any more digs
All
about.
right. Well, I don't want you to regret this, right? Like this is one of those things where this is your
True.
shot.
That's true.
So
No, I'll just convince you to have me back if I think of anything else.
okay, sounds good. I can do that.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out, and I'm going to end the stream.